So yesterday, the Ethereum beacon chain experienced a 7-block deep reorganization. I'll get into that in a second. And it, according to Martin Koppelman, who brought this up on Twitter, and then I think is basically the guy who got the conversation rolling, the current attestation strategy of nodes for the Ethereum beacon chain should be reconsidered to hopefully result in a more stable chain. And as he also notes, there are actually proposals out there that already exist. So what the heck happened? Okay, so a blockchain reorg is when you get two miners or two case validators, in this case validators, who create two blocks at essentially the same time. It's kind of like finishing a speed test in a class and two people put their hands up and yell done, all, like right on top of each other. So when a new block is proposed, it takes a bit of time for all the nodes to verify that that is the block, and some will acknowledge the one block, let's say the red block, and others might acknowledge the other or the green block. So you have like a split, a momentary chain split. So in the rules of blockchain creation, the longest chain is the winner, right? But you've got now two blocks going on, and some people are going to want to have to figure out, are we going to build on the red block or the green block? So what's supposed to happen is the next block gets mined and it kind of goes, green block, and it locks onto that one because it saw it first. And that now makes it the longest chain, and everything should go tickety-boo on from there. Now, in this case, block 74 in the Ethereum beacon chain was a little late hitting some of the nodes, and the next block was on time. So there was like a sort of stutter step in the timing of the blocks being broadcast. Kind of like, anyway, it just like tripping over yourself a little bit. So there's this thing now that they have, and I'm not going to get into it but I call it like a magic fix called a boost. And you think of like Mario Kart, where you're like on that little track and you go boom, and it kind of jumps ahead, and everything's supposed to line up. But not
this is making so much sense.
Yeah, so not all of the Ethereum clients have this boost feature. Ethereum has what? How many clients are there? Well, like 6 clients that all
around that 5 or 6.
Ethereum. 5 or 6. Not all of them have this little boost feature. So you had some of them sort of shooting the block along faster in the queue, and others are like, we can't catch up. So the problem was that the attestation nodes that proposed the next few groups of blocks in a row weren't running the clients that had the boost feature. So basically you ended up with a timing glitch. And the odds of this happening are super duper low, but conditions, they happened, which of course made everyone freak out. And this is not a big deal. It is kind of a big deal because you don't want to be having chain splits and you don't want time continuum on the blockchain breaking, but it kind of did. Now, it sorted itself out in 7 blocks, which, again, not too big a deal, but yeah, 7 blocks is kind of a big deal. Now, can this get fixed? Yes, it can. If all of the clients were to get this little magic boost feature, apparently from what I'm reading, then this should even itself out, and it shouldn't happen again, and it shouldn't be as big a deal. And that's why we test things, and that's why when crap happens, we try to come up with solutions. But everything's hunky-dory now, no big deal, except kind of a big deal because we want to make sure it doesn't happen again. Okay, who wants to weigh in on this?
I'll snag it. I'm glad there's no Bitcoin maximalists on this show. Otherwise, this would just be like a shouting match between all of us. And actually, that could be pretty entertaining. So who knows?
It could be me.
Could be you. That was pretty generous take
I'm
on it, though.
You weren't the shouting match.
I know.
Yeah, maybe one day. This story matters because blockchains are a different way for settling money. Traditionally, in banks, the person who's selling your money is also responsible for it in a legal sense. You know whose door to knock on if something ends up not working. With blockchains, that's not always the case. There's this independent, decentralized network of computers that are all working together and against each other to settle your money. And if something goes wrong, basically it's whose fault? Your fault for using the system. In this case, it's a little bit different because the Ethereum team is culpable because they've designed it. And if it's not built correctly, then people are going to get mad at the devs. Can't sue the devs, but you can definitely lash out at them on Twitter at the very least. With these reorgs, what we see is that money is not settling in the way that it's supposed to. Again, if you're using a traditional bank account or using a traditional exchange, your money is going to settle the way that it's supposed to be executed. And if not, you have a legal claim. Here, the money wasn't settled correctly, and so there's not much you can do about it. Luckily, the beacon chain, like you said, Christy, is still experimental. There's actually no money on the chain right now. It will have money, hopefully this year, moving on top of it. But it tells you, like, is this thing ready for live action? And a lot of people after this incident are looking at it and saying, like, maybe we should wait a little bit longer and change some parameters so that when this thing is live, people can trust that the money is going to flow correctly with how it's supposed to operate. Zach, I'll give it to you for your take.
I'm just going to ask some more questions. So, Christy, in terms of the proposals that were mentioned as being out there, is there any sort of, I don't know, consensus at the social layer around what's the best way forward to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen again?
I don't think there's, I haven't seen on the social level a whole lot of people who actually know what's going on to weigh in on it properly. I think there's a lot of hand wringing from what I've seen. But the people who seem, and again, this is just me watching people on Twitter or whatever, there is a measured response, and then there's the run around with your hair on fire response. And Twitter has its fair share of the latter. You have to look for the former. That's there as well. People are good at explaining what happened. Lord knows I relied on them before I started talking. So yeah, there is a measured take out there, but people are, like I say, it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. It's a big deal because you don't want stuff breaking. You want to make sure you deal with it. But it's not such that things are completely screwed up and there's no hope. So I think that is the message that I'm seeing that's out there right now in social media world. It's happening now as opposed to in August, which is a good thing. Reorgs have happened. This is not a brand new thing that it's happened on Bitcoin, not for a long time and not, drastically, but it happens. And what you have to also appreciate is that blocks that are mined at the same time that cause the splits in the first place tend to have the same transactions in them to begin with. So it's not like you have a completely different version of even the transactions. They often are the same transactions. So those transactions that should have been mined in the red block got mined in the green block. You've got an orphan block, but the block that got left behind probably doesn't have a whole lot going on in it that is going to break anything. And any transactions that may not have made it into the other block got thrown back into the mempool for the next time around. So it's not insignificant, but it's not earth-shattering. So Jen, you had your hand up.
Just a question. So is this going to affect the anticipated merge, the thing we are all waiting for? Should we expect that to be delayed further now?
Let's take a bet.
I'm going to ask Will.
We should all do a bet. We never do anything gamifying on this show. It might delay the merge. I think they probably just have to change some parameters. They might have to do a hard fork on the beacon chain, which has happened a few times just for like updates to the beacon chain. And that could push the merge date back a little bit. So I would say, yes, it could, like a 30% chance, 20% chance that they delay the merge because of this. Depends on how severely they take it. Maybe they find a fix really quickly. Maybe it's like not a big deal. But from what I'm seeing so far, it does look like a big deal.
Yeah. I think the other issue is going to be how much of an attack vector does this become? Because if it was a glitch, like I think I'm seeing from the discussion, that's one thing. But if it also reveals a potential attack vector on the chain down the road, and that is another part of the discussion, then that is something that they're going to have to take a look at and see what can be done in order to mitigate that as a potential problem. It's one thing for it to happen by accident. It's another thing to make it a vulnerability that somebody can exploit. So there are lessons to be learned.